Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, your exclusive source for two-way basketball. And now, your hosts, coming to you from the Slim Four Studio, Andy and Benny Hill.
Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to two-way basketball here in the fantastic state of Utah. I'm your host, Andy Hill. I'm here with Coach Benny Hill, who has returned from the Caribbean in the newly renovated Slim 4 Studio, sponsored by Security National.
Bingo.
Welcome home.
It's good to be back. Kind of good to be back. It's good to be back at home. Always when you come back home, it's good, but it was 80 degrees when we left yesterday.
Yeah.
So
It's been mild here. Hasn't been a super cold week, so at least there wasn't a foot of snow and minus 20 degrees or something. So
vacations are good, but unfortunately, you eventually have to come back to reality. So it's good to be back home.
Good. I'm excited to hear about the trip tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about the battle for Atlantis. Before we do that, we'd like to thank our title sponsor, Security National, our good friend Chris Jorgensen up there in the eFirm office. Give him a call, 435-283-3000, as he says, turning houses into homes. If you're building a home, buying a home, anything, any of your mortgage needs, reach out to Chris and he'll take care of you.
Good friend Chris.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
I'm a little off my game.
Well, it's weird, you know.
A little off my game. We got into Salt Lake late last night, and then we just stayed up there because it was late. Mm-hmm. So we got home this afternoon. Geez, I don't know, 3 o'clock, something like that. So just trying to got my notes all prepped, ready to go. So you might have to carry us for a little bit until I get fired up.
That's all right. I was thinking the same thing. I've been off work. I went to work Monday, and then I was off work since Monday afternoon. So I haven't done much for the last 4 or 5 days. Sat around and
You took time out since Monday?
I was gone Tuesday
right,
and Wednesday. Yeah. Had a small little medical procedure done, so I just kind of laid around the house for a couple days, and then had Thanksgiving, watched a whole bunch of basketball and football, and really didn't do a whole lot. So
it was a great week.
It was nice. So tonight, it's for me, same thing. It's like I got to try to get back in the routine.
It's probably the same thing that basketball teams and coaches are feeling.
Oh yeah,
having that time off, you kind of get a little lethargic, and
yeah.
But man, it's full steam ahead now.
Yeah, we were just talking right before we started the podcast. Benny said, "Hey, was there any games really this week?" I know North Summit played, at least in the two-way ranks. North Summit played.
Coach Priest got a dub.
He got a win. Beaver took on the defending 1A state champ Paiute Thunderbirds and fell to them. Other than that, it was a pretty quiet week in the basketball world.
I do think Millard had a game because
Millard
my kids
did.
Were talking about Rhodes went off and scored
a
significant amount of points.
Millard put up 100 spot.
Must not have played a very good team.
I don't remember who they played, but I just remember seeing out on the waiver wires. I was looking on social media, and somebody said Millard scores 100, and I was like,
"Sorry, Coach Rhodes, we don't know the exact team you played. I think it was Monument Valley or Whitehorse, one of the two."
Irregardless, to put up 100 points in a game is a whole lot.
That's some good conditioning for him and get him tuned up for this week coming ahead.
Yeah. So later in the podcast, we're going to talk about this upcoming week because, as Benny said, it is full steam ahead. I looked at the schedule, and it's game on. It's basketball time. So hopefully the teams have been rested up. I know a lot of them did play prior to this. Hopefully they get those Thanksgiving blues out and get the kids back in the gym tomorrow. Probably going to take a little while for them to get back to. Most of them have been out of school for at least since Wednesday.
Interestingly enough, I shouldn't say a lot, there are still teams that traditionally don't play games until after Thanksgiving for this very reason. There are coaches that subscribe to the theory that, hey, let's get in the gym and start playing games as soon as possible, which would have been, almost 10 days ago. Mm-hmm. So some teams like to get games in early. Some like to wait after Thanksgiving. Whatever your preference is, but I can see the logic in waiting till after Thanksgiving because you have this big, long, lethargic break right here you have to deal with. But, yeah, it's go time now.
Yeah, exciting. I'm excited for this week. A lot of things moving. We're going to talk about the Central Utah preview a little bit later on in the podcast. But before we get started, let's talk about the battle for Atlantis.
I'll tell you what, the battle for Atlantis is something that we watch every year. A lot of basketball fans, purists, they love to watch these games during Feast Week. Mm-hmm. That's what they call it on ESPN. You get a lot of these preseason tournaments where they match up great competition. And for some reason, the Battle for Atlantis in our home has always been the number one tournament we waited for each year. Mm-hmm. And several years ago, we always talked, hey, we're going to go. And we just never could get it done. Kansas was never there during the time that we wanted to go, why Jackson was here. So once Kansas got the invite, and BYU actually got the invite this same year also, it was something we couldn't pass up. So we've always talked about it, so we went and did it. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, but, man, it far exceeded all my expectations.
So I have a couple questions. For our listeners out there, I haven't even had a chance to talk to Benny. He got home this afternoon. We traded text while they were down there, but haven't really had a chance to talk. So a couple questions, that we can go through. One of my questions is, how do you get an invitation to go? I mean, it seems like a pretty awesome opportunity, and there was a field night invitational, and a bunch of teams were playing across the country, but how do you get invited?
I don't know. I just assume they do a very, very good job there. I was blown away by the organization, and the whole presentation of the event was unbelievable. They put out these invitations almost 2 years in advance. And I don't know how the selection process goes, but typically I think they're probably trying to find top-rated teams, good quality teams are going to bring fans with them to the games. And that's one thing I'm telling you what, you talk about passionate fans. Kansas, oh, wow, that's a wild group. Tennessee, wild group. Wisconsin. Those three had the biggest fan bases there. Man, they bring it. And people are passionate about their basketball. The teams there, we had USC. They probably had the smallest contingent there, surprisingly.
They're really a
private school, football school. They had the smallest group there. You had USC, BYU, Butler, Dayton, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Kansas, and North Carolina State. So big-time basketball, big-time conferences. And, man, I tell you what, it was good basketball. It was probably the equivalent of playing games at Gunnison High School, a gym about that size, if you had bleachers in the corners too. So you had bleachers all the way around. It would be like college games in Gunnison High School's gym.
That's awesome.
It was electric.
So I know
it was loud.
Obviously, it was over Thanksgiving break. It's early. It's preseason. What was the feel like in the gym?
Some of the games were they were NCAA tournament atmospheres. We went to start it off. Kansas has a target on their back. Obviously, everyone's gunning for Kansas, so you get their best shot. We saw them the first game against NC State, and NC State they brought it. They were amped. Their coaches were amped. Their bench, their fans. I mean, it was electric from the start. And that was the very first game of the tournament on Wednesday at 12 noon. It was electric. And what blew my mind is once we left that game, each game you had to leave because you buy tickets either for the whole tournament, every game, or just for the team that you're there for. So we left that Kansas game, which was the first game, and the next game after that was Tennessee and I don't know who they were playing. Irregardless, the lineup of fans waiting to get in the next game just blew my mind. The line went forever because they were just passionate fan bases that traveled out there to get into these games. But every game was like the next game, Kansas versus Wisconsin. It was like a March Madness game.
We watched on TV. You could tell, even just on TV, that Wisconsin game, they were getting after it.
I mean, the Wisconsin player, because like I said, everyone wants to knock off the champs. And Wisconsin came gunning. Kansas led most of the game. They'd go up by 8, 10, 12, even it got up to about 15 at one point. Wisconsin just kept running back to eventually put it into overtime. But the atmosphere, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And to be that close to these athletes that are so big and playing so fast and physical, for true basketball fans, it was unbelievable.
That's amazing. What kind of access did you have? Access to players, coaches?
So oddly enough, I contacted them and I requested a media pass
from the actual resort.
From the resort, the Atlantis resort, who put on the Battle for Atlantis. And sure enough, I go down to the table that's on the one half of the court has the media table that's right on the court. Sure Sure as can be. I got a fourth row media little spot for me on the table right there on the court.
So did you sit down there?
Yeah. A lot of the games I sat down there right on the court.
Really?
Yeah. Bring my laptop out, and there's coaches. There's right next to me there was scouting coaches from the other teams. So at one point, Tennessee's coaches were sitting next to me. They were scouting the Kansas game that was going on, and there was other Dayton coaches showed up, and North Carolina State coaches. They were next to me, and then some other production media groups were all the way on down the line. At midcourt obviously was the ESPN group.
Oh yeah.
Sonny Dykes, is that his name? Sonny
Yeah.
Dykes, he was doing the game, and Greg Chiambi. Mm-hmm. They were at midcourt, and each team had their media groups that were all there. So, I mean, I was definitely a fish out of water, but I had my spot on the table,
Hey,
fourth
there you
row
go.
media.
Hey.
What was cool for me, we're just newbies, rookies in the media world, but they had a press room there. Never been to a press conference, so I'm like, oh. I was in the hallway and I heard them say, "Hey, we're closing the doors for the Kansas press conference. If you're coming in," I'm like, "I'm going in there." So here I am sitting in a press conference with Bill Self, and Greg Gard later. Mm-hmm. He was the Wisconsin coach, so I was in the press conference with Bill Self and Greg Gard. How
That's
cool
awesome.
is that? So, and they brought players in, so you had the question and answer with the players in the press conference, and I don't know. It was just unbelievable. To me, it was basketball overload. Mm-hmm. I mean, sensory overload for me as a basketball coach and a basketball fan, and then being us trying to get in the media. It was overload. I just couldn't believe it. You'd walk down the hallway. There was times you would walk down the hallway in this. The gym is in a ballroom. Mm. They've converted it. It's a big ballroom. They converted it into a basketball gym with stands. So leading into it is just the big hallway of the hotel. And there's conference rooms along the hallway, which are the locker rooms that the teams are in. Mm. And so you'd be walking down the hallway, and you'd see players from every single team walking down the hall. You'd say, "Oh, there's Bill Self, there's Rick Barnes, there's Greg Gard, Thad Matta just walking down the halls."
Wow.
You'd go knuckle them up. Mark Pope was there. You just knuckle them up. Nice game, whatever. It was crazy. It was like out of this world. Mm. And our kids were just chasing players, getting photos and autographs with almost every player on every team. The access there was unreal.
That's cool.
So if you're a basketball lover and you just love just the purity of just going and being involved, just being around players that close and coaches, no better environment than that.
That's awesome.
It's kind of pricey, but
yeah, still, I mean,
it was well worth it.
Think about having that kind of access and being. I mean, it's one thing to be in a big stadium, you're 20,000 people, and the guys go in the locker room and you never see them, and
you're kind of disconnected from it.
Oh yeah, you show the game and they just disconnect. It's like watching it on TV. But it sounds like this was up front and personal, and
so with the media pass, I asked for 2 of them. So Bones threw one on, so we would just go down in the tunnel where all the players are, just before pregame when they come out of the tunnel. We were just right down there next to them as they're coming off the court into the lobby areas. Anyway, it was everything I hoped it would be and more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You see anybody special for Kansas?
All of them. Kids ran into Bill. I went to get pizza with Madeline and Brady for dinner, and the boys, Jet and Tice and Megan, were just waiting around for some Kansas players to come through. Bill Self just comes walking down the hallway by himself, so the boys take a picture with Bill Self and chat with him a little bit. And
that's cool.
It was. I know I'm gushing on along, but it was
unbelievable
for basketball. It was awesome.
That's awesome. It was fun. It was fun for us being home, watching the games, knowing that you were there. It was different, knowing, hey, somebody's there. They're cheering for him. Every once in a while, you couldn't see because it was dark on TV.
Yeah, they darken everything. Yeah.
So every once in a while, they'd pan something and they would stop, and you could kind of see where you guys were at. But I mean, it looked like it was, like you say, like at a high school gym.
I'd get a few texts about every game. Hey, I saw you standing here, or I saw you standing there watching this game. So that was cool. There were a couple cool things that I wanted to share in relationship to our whole goal of the Fourth Row podcast, and try to tie all this in together, why we're even talking about the battle for Atlantis. But a lot of it had to do. I mean, this trip was kind of it was a milestone for our family to not put some closure to things, but to accomplish something that we always wanted to do with Jackson. This was something that we always talked about doing, and so this was the culmination of, like I said, not closure of that, but of that time period, but it was like this was Jackson's trip. Mm-hmm. So all in all, that's why overall it was such an awesome event for us. But when we flew out, we flew to Fort Worth, and we got to Fort Worth. There was a guy there that came hustling up to the, people, they hustle up to the get in line. He was decked out in Jayhawk gear, shoes, pants, shirt, hat, just decked. We're like, this guy means business here, And I didn't see his wife at that particular time, but we got off the plane in Miami, and I came out of I just came around a corner, and I ran into him, and it was him and his wife standing there, and I had my Jayhawk hat on. And she says, "You a Jayhawk fan?" I said, "Well, absolutely, I'm a Jayhawk fan." And I said, obviously you guys are. I can see you guys are set up." And I said, "You guys obviously are going down to the games," and we exchanged. "Yeah, we're going down to the games, and we're KU fans." And the guy says, "Well, just so you know, he unzipped his jacket and he had a Grady Dick T-shirt on. It's like we're Grady Dick's parents." I said, "You don't say." I said, "My kids absolutely are enamored by your son and the way he plays, and just us personally. Our personal story is he said, "Well, you guys are from Utah. Why are you coming down here?" So we got to tell him about Jackson, and we got to tell him about the number 4, and Grady Dick is number 4. So his dad teared up. He's like, "Dude, this is absolutely awesome. I'm so happy you guys can come down here." We exchanged, text numbers. He said, I'll do my best to see if we can get things lined up with Grady's. They'll be super busy. I don't know if I can, but I said, if you can or can't, irregardless, I said, just let them know that we're big fans. And so followed the next day, I get a text from a guy named Brian Haney, and his text to me was kind of interesting. He says, I'm going to pull it up just because it was cool. I just get this text out of the blue. It says, oh shoot, it's on my messenger. Anyway, I got a text from Brian that says, "Hey, my name's Brian Haney. I'm the voice of the Jayhawks. I do the TV and radio broadcast play-by-play for the Jayhawks. I met with Bart Dick, Grady's dad. He told me a little bit about your story, and I want to meet you guys tomorrow." So it's like, here we go. Here's the wheels rolling again about the magic of people's goodwill and kindness. So we meet with Brian the next day, which is the game of the North Carolina State game, the very first day on Wednesday. And sure enough, Brian Haney, he is very active in fundraising for childhood cancer awareness and supporting kids with childhood cancer. That's what one of his big focuses outside of just doing his normal radio gig. So he says, "Hey, we want to feature Jackson we want to dedicate this broadcast, today's broadcast to Jackson." And so they had this on their headsets. They wrote his name across the piece of tape, Jackson Hill, across his headset. And then afterwards, he gave me this. He gave me his sheet, his card of calling the game. He's got all of his notes and everything on it. But this was the tag that he put across his headset across the top. And he's dedicating this game to Jackson Hill. And on here it just says, "Jacko's courage was an inspiration to so many. God bless you guys, Brian Haney, voice of the Jayhawks." That's his card with all the players on it that he reads, cool. All of his stats and everything that he reads out. So he's like, "I want you guys to have this. This is a game dedicated to Jackson and his memory." And so that alone, just the story of Jackson lives on. Mm-hmm. Now the story of Jackson, you got introduced, Brian Haney introduced him to, the Jayhawk Nation now during that broadcast. So anyway, very, very special time. Got some pictures down on the court with Brian and his color guy. And he said he would be on our podcast too. So I'm gonna try to hold him to it.
Yeah, let's get him on.
One other story that I wanted to share real quick too is we were walking to the very first game, this game here, and all the 4 kids had Grady Dick jerseys on because it's number 4, Grady Dick. We're walking down the sidewalk, and we passed this family of grandpa, grandma, mom and dad, and some kids, and we exchanged, the usual funny jokes about Dick jerseys, and and look at that group of dicks right there walking, and we go into the stadium, and I went and got my media pass, and I was out hustling around doing stuff. Well, the grandmother of this group just comes up to Megan and says, "By the way, are you guys LDS?" And they were Jayhawk fans. And Megan says, "Well, yes, we are." So she proceeds to tell the story that they're from St. George, but they had all went to Kansas. The mom and dad, grandpa and grandma, went to Kansas for medical school. He was a doctor, so they were big Jayhawk fans, and they had brought their son and daughter and their family out to the battle for Atlantis, and their 5-year-old son had passed away on May 16th, 2021 of a brain tumor.
Really?
And that's 6 days after Slim died. So we shared this moment of, we tell Jackson's story, they told their story, and we had this bond over childhood cancer there at the stadium. It was just, these small little stories were just, I don't know, they're testimonies to me of how, I don't know, there's a greater plan here. There's a greater plan that things work together, and sports is just a way to bring us all together. Kind of like our same goal with the podcast, just to bring us all together through sports. So anyway, those are couple of my few small stories that we experienced there at the Battle for Atlantis that made it super, super special.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No coincidences. So my next question is this, or maybe my last question is this: will you ever want to stay home for Thanksgiving again?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, next year the Jayhawks are at the Maui Invitational over Thanksgiving week.
Nice.
So I don't know, maybe I'll start saving my pennies for that, because after doing it one time, there's just no substitute for it.
Yeah. Being
gone. And you mentioned this, there's something about, now Hawaii's this other direction, but there's no substitute for Caribbean beaches.
Oh, no, there is. People go to the beach in California and they say, so nice. Listen, if you've never been to the Caribbean, the beaches in California are not nice. The water in California is not nice. Go to the Caribbean sometime. It'll blow your mind.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Glad you had a wonderful time. Yeah, it was, like I say, it was fun for us too to be home and just live your experience through you and watching games, and it was cool.
No,
it was cool.
It was everything we hoped it would be. We were able to share Jackson's story. We were able to feel, and the other thing I'll tell you, and people may not ever believe me about this, but I'm telling you, there's something special with I don't know, sporting events. There's such crazy things that happen. The end of that Wisconsin-Kansas game,
unbelievable.
Was an unbelievable finish. And you can call me crazy if you want to call me crazy, but I always just think Slim's laughing right now.
Oh yeah.
Or there's things that happen. There's just no explanation for them.
Yeah.
And so for us, we left that thing, and that was complete vindication that this was Slim's weekend, and we'll take it.
Nice.
So
nice. Too bad they couldn't finish it off, but
it was a little disappointing the next game. But you can only ask for so many favors from up above.
That's the way it goes. That's why they go when they play these tournaments. They go, and obviously it's a good time to get away. But at the end of the day, these teams it's a business, right? And they're out there looking to get better. And Bill Self wants his team to be better, so he puts himself in these type of early situations early in the season. We'll see what his team's made of. Get a pressure situation. That Wisconsin game was big time pressure. Mm-hmm. NC State was good, and Tennessee is legit.
Yeah, and then they are loaded. Those kids are 7-footers that can shoot and run the court and jam. They're just
it's different level.
It's crazy basketball.
Unbelievable. Well, I'm glad you guys had a wonderful time. I was super jealous.
Dude, I could talk forever about it. We loved every second of it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. Great time. Well, let's shift gears away from the Caribbean back here to Utah. Last week, we talked a little bit about Region 16 here in the 2A ranks. Tonight, we're going to break down a little bit of Region 17. Region 17 is a little bit of an unknown to us and to a lot of the state, mainly just some demographic things, logistics, the type of the type of schools that they are, being private charter schools, and a lot of turnover that happens here and there. So for the next little while, let's talk a little bit about Region 17.
Region 17, I was going to roll through just the overall record of how things shook out last year, from top to bottom, led by Roland Hall Winged Lions, 7-0 in region, 17-4 overall. They had a fantastic year.
Unbelievable. Yeah, great year. We've talked a lot about Coach Alvidrez, how open he was. He came on the podcast, and he described his team to a T. When we saw them play, we knew it was exactly what we expected. They had what was, I would say, a storied year last year for the
and he was very comfortable and confident in talking about his team, and you're correct. Excuse me, they lived up to the billing. They played exactly how he said. They were well coached. They were a very disciplined team, and they were a very skilled team. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they had a great run. Finished fourth in the state. Yeah, showed out well in the state tournament.
Yeah,
very nice.
And barring an injury, who knows what could have happened to them. So
yeah,
great year for the Winged Lions.
Loaded. Second place in the region, Draper APA Eagles. They finished at 5-1 in region, 9-8 overall. I think there was a lot of turnover from that team last year. I think there's a lot of turnover from Roland Hall as well. But this team, a lot of their firepower and their size all graduated. Plus, they have a new coach.
Yep.
APA West Valley finished at 5-3 in region, 14-9 overall. Waterford finished 3-3 region, 8-9 overall. St. Joe's 0-7, 2-14 overall, and Utah Military Hillfield, the Thunderbirds, 0-6 region, 0-11 overall.
Yeah,
that's kind of the lay of the land there for the region.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, there's a couple reasons why we don't traditionally know a lot about these schools. Number one, there's not a lot of crossover between regions, especially in the preseason with the teams up north and teams down south, mainly just because of logistics. They like to play each other. Most of them are up on the Wasatch Front. So if they're looking for preseason games, it makes sense for them to catch up with somebody in Utah County or Salt Lake County or Davis County versus coming all the way down south. The other thing is, by the nature of their schools, being private and charter schools, a lot of kids coming in. That's just the nature of the schools. They're different than public schools. And so it's not a good or a bad thing. It just is what it is.
It's just what it is.
And so from year over year, we don't see a lot. We learned a lot about Roland Hall last year, where a lot of these kids, they start in grade school and move all the way through. I think they're the exception because a lot of these other ones are just traditional high schools versus the grade schools that go all the way through. Waterford may be
another one, yeah.
The other ones. But the other four schools, just a lot of kids coming in and out depending on where they're at. Big focus on academics in a lot of these schools too. So athletics, not that athletics isn't a priority, but doesn't always take the forefront all the time.
Exactly. But the reality of it is, do these kids have an influx of players each year? Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
It's just the way it is. And we could talk, banter, complain, whine, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Be it fair, unfair, not for that discussion right now. It just, they do have a lot of new influx of players and coaches, as mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And that presents its own challenge too. You imagine as a coach, year after year, you're constantly getting new players and trying to get guys to gel and things to happen. There's a challenge in and of itself. So you think, I'll just go out and get these players. Well, it doesn't always work like that.
Well, and plus if you have players that are there, but your coaches are rotating every year, then you have the same kind of dynamic going on. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, if we start at the bottom, Utah Military Hillfield, first-year coach Sylvester Daniels. Last year they finished overall ranking number 23 in 2A. They were 23rd in offense and 23rd in defense. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to throw a new coach into the mix this year, and they're starting all over again.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And same thing, we've seen them play over the years, and a lot of these schools have kids who haven't played a lot of organized basketball, and so they're out there. This is just part of their activity, and they're going out there and playing. And so Hillfield is one of those. I would say this year you probably see some similar things, challenges, new coach, new kids coming into a system.
We move on up to St. Joe's now. Once again, first-year coach Aaron Schrader, starting all over again. They finished 19th last year in 2A in the RPI. Offensively, they were 18th, and defensively 20th overall ranking last year. Looks like they have two returning contributors, Tyler Arroyo, a guard, and Alec Enriquez, a guard. Once again, unknown, but you're going to have new coach, new type of offense, defense, some new players, some returning players. But St. Joe's, like I said, they finished 0-7 and 2-14 last year. So big uphill battle for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, they've
cool mascot, by the way.
It's really cool. It's very cool.
Next team up, Waterford Ravens. Second-year coach, Corey Carpenter. So maybe a little bit more consistency. They finished 15th overall in the RPI and 12th in offense and number 4 in defense.
And Waterford,
so a little much more solid. We're seeing a lot more solid team here.
And I would say of a lot of these schools, Waterford does have some history. They've had some success over the years. They've had some good teams. They've had some good solid coaching. Again, it's just kind of goes up and down with what kind of kids you have.
Yeah, Coach Ryan Judd was the most recent coach there, and he was there for darn near most of the time that I was coaching. He was there, so he was a great coach, dynamic, very energetic. He produced some very skilled teams that ran good offense, played hard, very competitive teams. So Waterford is probably going to, starting as we start moving up, going to be a competitive team compared to these others, St. Joe's and Utah Military. Waterford will put a competitive team on the court. They were 3-3 in region, and 8-9 overall. So a competitive team.
Yeah, and I think you'll see some of that this year. It looks like they have a couple contributors coming back from last year. Diesel Knight, point guard.
I do not like a kid named Diesel Knight.
I know, that's pretty impressive. Diesel Knight, 7-8 points a game, 67 rebounds. That's a solid contributor. Carson Reynolds, Preston Jenkins. Looks like they've got some newcomers coming in as well, some underclassmen. So I'm excited to see what Waterford can do. Again, they've got a good tradition there at their school.
Yeah.
With their other athletic programs, very successful. With a lot of the things that they're doing at Waterford, very solid school. So I look for them again. Having a second-year coach, hopefully they can build on what they did last year. Even though there's a lot of things going on, this is still a tough region.
Yeah.
And traditionally, as we start to get to the top of this region, you're always going to see one of these schools that stand out. And every year, a team from this region makes a little bit of a run in the state tournament.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's typically, you are correct. There's one of these schools that you can count on. I say breaking through, but showing up to the party and making a little noise.
Yeah, West Valley's done it. We'll talk about them. Draper, Waterford's done it, and Roland Hall's done it. So
it'd be nice if we get a couple more of them making some noise.
It would be.
Just for some good storylines. Next team up, Draper APA Eagles. Justin Hadlock, first-year head coach. Yeah. Good turnover. Darius Beard had been there for a considerable amount of time, and he had brought teams to the state tournament consecutively. They put out some good teams, scored a lot of points, played fast, shot a lot of threes, and had some big players, some good players, talented players. He's moved on, so now you have a first-year coach. I would imagine that, and they graduated a lot last year.
They did. They lost some of their big guys from last year.
But they finished last year 5-1 in region and 9-8 overall, so a very competitive team. Finished number 7 in the RPI, so it's a good ranking right there. Offensively, they were number 1 in 2A last year. Offensively,
they put up a lot of points.
Yeah, and they played that way. That was their style. It was almost a full court, all out. We may give up some easy baskets on the defensive end. We're going to come back and score quick on our end. So defensively, they were number 18, so not super solid, but that fast pace of game will. If you play that fast and put up a lot of shots, you're going to give up a lot of points, but they scored a lot. So that was kind of their philosophy. What do you have on? You have stats, returners coming back?
The only one I show a couple. Ryan DeMarco, a senior guard, had a little bit of playing time last year. Julian Zavala, a little bit of playing time last year. So they're big scorers that they've had for years. They had a bunch of big, long, lanky kids that played. Yeah. Big three-point shooters. You don't get 67 points a game up by not doing that. Most of those kids graduated. They gave Kanab everything they wanted to last year. Kanab actually went up there last year.
They hosted.
And except for the fact that Case and James just took over that game in the second half last year, Kanab would have went home. I mean, Kanab was running on life support at that point.
Yeah, they were. The wheels were coming off about third quarter.
So APA had a great season. I could have very easily seen them, if they get past Kanab and get into the state tournament, I think they make a little bit of a run. They just had that kind of a team where they could score enough points that they could just outscore people.
Yeah, and they had some good size.
Yeah,
really good size. And their style of play is totally different than what the other regions 16 and 19 typically play.
Very
so
different.
They could knock a team off. Like I said, they almost knocked Kanab off.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Kanab was the lower ranked team, it would have been a 10 seed.
Yeah.
But they had them on the ropes.
Yeah.
Could easily beat them. But
so there may be a little bit of a rebuilding year for Draper, based on traditionally what they have, especially with the new coach coming in and losing a lot of those big name seniors that they had last year. It'll be interesting to see what they can do.
Roland Hall Winged Lions. We have the veteran of the group.
Yes.
In his 5th year of coaching, our good friend Zach Alvidrez.
Probably the best dressed coach on the bench in 2A.
He's dapper.
I can't say enough about him. I didn't know anything about him prior to meeting him last year, and I cannot tell you how impressed I was with the way he showed his team, the way he talked about Roland Hall. We asked him some tough questions last year. He didn't dodge anything. He was up front. He is what he is. He is passionate about basketball. He's passionate about Roland Hall, and he loves his kids.
You know, one thing I thought about this last year, because he was really, really, obviously he was excited to bring his team to the state tournament, and we had asked him, hey, you got your guys ready? And dude, he was unapologetically confident in his team. He's like, we're going to bring it. Mm-hmm. And we're going to bring it. And sure enough, I thought about this. He brings his team with, there may have been 20 fans.
Yeah, if they're
parents.
Lucky.
I don't think it was even cheerleaders. There might have been 20 parents there. And then here's his team, and everybody else in the gym and the tournament are all rural schools that know each other, have huge fan bases, and here they are, kind of the outliers coming into this party. He wasn't intimidated 1 ounce.
No, especially going into the SVC against South Sevier.
South Sevier.
They had their whole contingent there on a late afternoon game. I thought, oh, this is a recipe for disaster. They did exactly what they had to do, and they destroyed South Sevier.
Just knowing the whole circumstances of them being a complete outlier that no one knows, and they come to the rural school party, and they completely showed out, was impressive and an indication of how good of a coach Zach is, because his team, he was comfortable and confident with them, and they showed out well. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason. Now, is the reality, has Zach and his team, have they picked up players this year? I don't know. Maybe they have.
Maybe.
I don't know. But they do have some players coming back from last season. They lost majority of their firepower.
They did.
They had some talented skill guys, Sam Andrews, Ozzie Smith, to start with. They were very, very gifted. They finished the season last year at number 4 in the overall RPI ranking. They were 17-4 overall record and 7-0 in region, so they ran the table in region. And offensively, they were 5th in 2A in offense and 5th overall in defense. And solid team. Mm-hmm. All your components: point guard, shooters, big time rebounders, great defense, great offense.
Yeah, they had it. They had the team. I feel bad. Sam Andrews went down in the game against San Juan. Otherwise, I think it was different. But they showed up. I was so impressed how he handled himself, how his players handled themselves. That's one thing. He's coming to Gunnison Friday night to play the Bulldogs.
Excited about that.
I'm excited to have the Wing Lions down here to see what they have. Kai Dowdle, who was one of their sharpshooters for last year, he's back. Don't know a lot. They've got a couple other guys who have played a little bit here and there. I'm excited to see what he has. He's going to put a good product on the floor. They're going to play disciplined basketball. That's what Zach does. His guys are going to be disciplined. They're going to play his game. They're not going to get out of control. It's still early for them, but I'm excited to see what the Wing Lions have this year.
Our remaining team, which ends up as the coaches in the coaches poll of this region as the number 1 preseason team in Region 17, would be APA West Valley Eagles. Mm-hmm. Second-year coach Cameron Wood. They finished, overall record last year 14-9, 5-3 in region, number 11 in 2A, and they played Parowan Rams quite tough.
Yeah.
In the play-in game, 68-59. That's in Parowan, so quite impressive. Mm-hmm. Overall offense ranking number 6th in 2A, and defense number 3 in 2A. Interesting enough, Gunnison went up there, traveled up there last year and played them. And Gunnison was up big early in the first quarter, and APA West Valley put the clamps on them defensively and won that game going away. Mm-hmm. And just reading through Coach's comments, and I went back and I got an email from Coach Wood last year, and just the way things played out, we just didn't do a whole lot with those regions up there. Mm-hmm. For one reason or another, we were just so busy covering 16 and 19 that we didn't. But he did respond to me, and his Coach Wood spent time coaching at Brighton High School. Left Brighton High School and then got back into coaching it at APA West Valley. So he's an experienced coach at big-time basketball. He knows what he's doing. You could tell watching his team that he's a sharp coach and knows what's going on. But he is defensive-minded. Mm-hmm. They threw a lot of different defensive looks out there. He's got a very athletic team, too. They graduated some solid seniors that scored a lot of points from last year, but they got some good contributors coming back.
Yeah.
Contributors. Do you have contributors there?
I'm gonna put on my your linguistic hat right here. Comey Awkwar, a junior. If the one thing I remember about APA, long kids,
kids,
big, fast, long kids get up and down. A junior, 7 points a game, 90 rebounds last year. Addis Halaba, hopefully I said that right, 5.5 points a game, 90 rebounds. Peter Hakeem, 5.5 points per game, 51 rebounds, 90 assists. So they've got a solid core. I think of anybody in this region, from what we're seeing on paper, they have the best core coming back from last year. Yeah. If you know anything about APA, they're going to get up and down the court. They're going to play. I did hear this on the radio that day about someone playing with their hair on fire. The announcer, I think it was actually the Kansas announcer, said, if you're going to play with your hair on fire, that's how these guys play. They play with their hair on fire. The one thing that I do like about them, you notice they were number 3 in 2A in points allowed at 47.
Yep.
So they do get out and play a little scattered at times, but defensively, one of the best teams around. So if they can get some good contributors, get up and down the court, and they can keep that defense solid, watch out for APA. One of these teams somewhere in this region will make a run at the state tournament. That's
what I'm kind of excited about. Believe it or not, I always hope that some of these schools come out of the woodwork, and make a run, because it adds so much more variety. Mm-hmm. The styles of plays are different, of playing is different. It just adds more context and more fun to the overall environment. And it also, people get worked up when there's a private school that comes and plays, or a charter school that comes and makes some noise. Rural schools sometimes get a little heartburn over that, which is good. Oh. It's all healthy. That's why I hope we get a good story coming. Hopefully at least one team from this region up there.
But I think if you're good, you're good. This is one thing I thought about watching the Battle for Atlantis is you see a team like Kansas, who plays in the Big 12, playing Wisconsin from the Big 10. Very, very different styles, right? The Big Ten's, it's the smash mouth. Yeah. They play smash mouth football. They do the same thing in basketball. They're going to come out, smash you in the mouth, play hard-nosed defense. They're okay with a 42-41 game. Big 12 doesn't like that. It's a different style. And then you move down to the SEC with Tennessee, and it's a whole different level. You get a little bit of a microcosm here in 2A with this. That's why I'm with you. I wish more of these teams would get out and play more preseason and get to know these teams. To me, competition is competition. And if you're the best guy on the block, then go out and prove you're the best guy on the block. Yeah. At the end of the day, you can only put 5 guys on the court. Mm-hmm. So if that's where you are, lace them up and go and do it. So
Coach has got a comment here that he has shared. We are a young athletic team. We're going to pride ourselves on stellar defense and hopefully continue to get better along the way. We have a fun region with great coaches all around, and we're looking forward to hopefully competing hard with them. Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah, I noticed too, these regions up north played a lot of games the last 2 weeks amongst each other, crossing across regions and doing different things. I think just because of logistics, it's easier to do that if you're in the Salt Lake Valley, where the rural areas, I mean, other than North Sevier, we don't have a game within 45 minutes. It just doesn't work like that. They can just go across the city and bounce across. So excited to see what Region 17 has to offer this year. Somebody's going to rise to the top.
Hope we have a good one. Hope we get another Roland Hall show. Maybe Roland Hall will show up again.
Yeah.
But at least hopefully someone from this region shows out.
Yeah. Well, it's a good breakdown. I didn't know much about them, so I spent some time this weekend researching a little bit. And if anybody else is out there from Region 17, any of the coaches, parents, got some information, reach out to us, please. We'd love to share what you have.
But also you mentioned Roland Hall coming to Gunnison next Friday.
Yeah.
That'll be a great game.
Yeah, I'm excited. Excited to have them here. Let's move on to one of our newest segments that I love this one. We'll kind of throw it out there. And sometimes when you're doing podcasts and you're coming up with things, you come up with a lot of ideas, and some of them just don't.
Kind of dumb. And
they don't stick. This one's been pretty good.
I like it.
It's been pretty good so far. So this segment's called Inside the Numbers. It's sponsored by Robertson Kimball Accounting. I appreciate them always supporting their South Sevier Rams. The question that I had from last week was there are two teams currently in the 2A ranks who've won back-to-back-to-back state championship titles. Those teams are, number one, our hometown Gunnison Bulldogs.
Coach Danny Hill.
Coach Danny Hill, who coached at Gunnison Valley High School for years and years. A fantastic coach. We're all related, so we love Coach Hill. Fantastic job. He also won a lot on the baseball field as well. So not only was he successful on the basketball court, but on the baseball field. So 1972, 73, and 74, three-peat, from the Gunnison Bulldogs. And the other one, Enterprise High School, Larry Shirtlift.
Imagine that.
1986, 87, and 88. During that time, they had a run. I think it was around that time when they dominated in baseball too. Absolutely dominated.
So they're dominating on the diamond and on the basketball court.
So there for a while, Gunnison did it here in the 70s. Enterprise did it in the late 80s and early 90s. So there's the answer from Inside the Numbers last week. Gunnison High School, Coach Danny Hill. Enterprise High School, Coach Larry Shirtlift.
I pulled up the podcast from last week. The video looks a lot cleaner last week.
Looks really good.
Get some extra work on that one.
Before we get to your numbers for tonight, I was also looking up this, and I found it very interesting. The number one all-time scorer in Utah high school basketball history is from?
Probably Gunnison High School.
Gunnison Valley High School, Gary Hill.
Gary Hill.
He is a relation, would be our dad's first cousin. Played for Gunnison High School 1959 to 1963, scored 2,283 total points. And if you look up the record books, my guess is nobody will probably ever beat that.
That's with no three-point shot either.
No three-point shot. So he averaged, I just did quick numbers, so let's say they played 20 games a year, he would have averaged for 4 years almost 29 points a game. that is impressive.
Senior year, yeah.
One of his years, I think he averaged 32 points a game. Again, without a three-point shot, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So little tidbit from Gunnison Valley High School and some of our relations, Gary Hill.
We had two people, bless these two people's hearts, that contributed to our contest, so we'll give both of these people a winner. We had our good friend Trevor Okerlund.
Yes.
And our good friend Bill Harris.
I saw that. Billy Harris chimed in.
Shout out to Bill.
Shout out, yeah, both of those guys. Appreciate you guys commenting. We'll get something out to you.
Trevor Okerlund, a proud North Sevier Wolf.
Yep, and Billy played on the 93 baseball state championship team.
Yes, he did.
You.
Yep, he was a year younger than us. Yes. Yeah. Two good guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for following us, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, what do you got for us tonight?
My numbers are 11 and 6.
11 and 6. Those are some random numbers.
11 and 6. There are two teams in the top 10 of overall state championships for a school. Two schools in 2A right now are in the top 10 of total state championships. One has 11 and the other has 6.
Okay.
What two schools?
All right. I have no idea.
11 and 6. Two 2A schools are in the top 10 of total state championships.
Wow.
One won't surprise you. The other one will surprise you a little bit.
All right. Well, give some people some digging to go and do.
Inside the numbers, baby.
Inside the number. We appreciate, again, Kimball and Roberts. Roberts and Kimball. I'm not sure which way they go. But we appreciate them sponsoring this segment on the podcast every week. I know they're a shout-out to their South Severe Rams. So excited to see them start playing this week. Let's move on. As we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, this week is full of games. Traditionally, one of the best places here in Central Utah
this week,
where you can see a lot of basketball in one place, is at the Central Utah Preview. Talk for a minute about what that actually is.
The Central Utah Preview has kind of morphed over the years. It used to just be a 2A, like a 1A, 2A, then a 2A, 3A, then it went to 2A to 4A. Anyway, now it's just the Central Utah Preview, so we get a variety of teams are invited to the SVC in Richfield to just play a selective amount of games. I believe they play 2 total games.
2 games each.
Like a Friday, Saturday type thing. So you get some interesting matchups that you normally wouldn't get because they wouldn't schedule games. But it's sometimes 2A versus 2A and sometimes 2A versus 3A. Mm-hmm. So there's some very cool matchups. So looking to see. We could just run through these games just to run through them. And then highlight a couple of them. Delta versus Parowan. This is one right here I'm really interested in, Kanab versus Duchesne. That's going to tell us a lot where these two teams are this early on. We talked about, Kanab is currently sitting in number 1 in our first Power 5 poll, and Duchesne is now sitting at a dark horse in the Power 5 poll. So this will be a good solid matchup here. Another one to see. Ogden has been down to this a couple years running now. Enterprise versus Ogden.
It's going to be an interesting matchup.
When would you see that? You wouldn't see that matchup.
Nope.
Typically, Kanab played Ogden last year and lost at the very end. Maybe it was overtime. Kanab had them beat, and they just got a little sloppy at the end, turned the ball over too much. But Enterprise versus Ogden, fantastic matchup. San Juan going up against the Templars. I'm telling you what, Manti is tough. Ooh, they're loaded.
They're good.
North Severe versus Juab.
That's a tough draw for the Wolves.
Yes. And North Summit versus South Severe. So we'll be able to see a lot of our top Power 5 teams. South Severe, get a look at them and get a look at Kanab. Enterprise. Duchesne is our dark horse. Just a variety of teams to see play right there.
Yeah,
that's on Friday.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot of good, and if you back up earlier in the week, South Severe, speaking of Manti, South Severe plays Manti on Wednesday night as well at Manti.
That is a dynamic matchup.
That's South Severe's opening night at Templars.
In Manti?
In Manti. That's a tough game. That's a tough game right there.
Yeah, it
so is. South Severe, they haven't played yet. They're getting right in the fire this week.
Well, their coach wanted to challenge them, so they've got Manti on Wednesday. And then they've got North Summit on Friday, and then Grantsville on Saturday. So he's throwing them right in the fire. Wow. So hats off to Coach Christensen and his squad. We'll see how they play out. Other games on Saturday: Enterprise v. Carbon, Duchesne versus Juab. Another intriguing matchup there. To finish it out, San Juan versus North Severe, Parowan versus North Summit, and Kanab v. Delta.
Yeah, good games.
The thing that's fun about this too is you don't have any inter-region matchups. You just get to see some games that you typically wouldn't see, and some of these 2A versus 3A matchups are very intriguing. So that'll be a great weekend of basketball.
So let me ask you this question: I know in the college ranks, this weekend was loaded with tournaments, traditional tournaments. You had the Maui Invitational, the
tournaments, yeah,
Phil Knight tournament up in Oregon or Washington, wherever that was at. Battle for Atlantis. A lot of things going on more. There's true tournament atmospheres. This one is more of a preview. Do you see there's a benefit or a plus or minus in playing a preview versus a tournament?
Absolutely. So you play in a preview, you just have 2 games to play right here. You have it scheduled out. You know who you're going to play, so you can game prep for both of who you're playing. In the tournament, like for instance, out in Atlantis, the big major factor is 3 days consecutive playing. In this, you got just shortened down to 2 days. No, you could even have a 3-day invitational. If your games are scheduled out, you typically have good rest in between. But in a tournament, it's balls to the wall every game. because you want to get the trophy. And I was shocked at how big of a deal it was to win that. Tennessee was amped like they won the Natty. I mean, it was a big deal. So at any level, people want to win a trophy. So when you go 3 days back to back, one, you have it's balls to the wall for 3 straight games, and Kansas was tired on Friday. You could see they were tired. Yeah. Tennessee had a little bit more to go, so that was what put them over the edge. The other thing is scouting. You don't know who you're going to see the next day.
Right.
So it's also preparation for what a state tournament is like. So coaches, I would think they would prefer a true tournament. Kids would prefer a true tournament also.
Yeah.
Because there's just that anticipation of who you could potentially play.
Yeah.
And there's something cool about looking at brackets. I don't know what, there's just brackets are just cool for everybody involved to chart out who plays who and how you get to the championship. And so I think that's why that Atlantis and Maui's another one, the film that true tournament style is popular amongst these big time teams.
Right.
So, irregardless, this is a good time for people. It's called a preview. That's what it is, to preview these teams.
Yeah, because we've been to the preview before. It's, we're one of 15 people in the gym, not counting the players, and so there's I don't want to say there's a lack of intensity because the players are still going to get after it, but that's why I was curious about if this was a tournament, early season tournament versus a preview. I think you would get a different level of...
You get a different level of intensity and different level of overall interaction.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do something like that sometime.
That would be cool.
Especially an early a true tournament. Because as I was watching that this weekend, I'm like, man, there's some intensity. This is pre-Thanksgiving stuff. These guys are playing till the middle of March. And there's a lot of basketball ahead, but in order to get to that level, you've got to be in those pressure cookers.
And that's really what it is. You get put in that pressure cooker. I mean, man, Bill Self was about ready to blow a gasket. I mean, it was postseason intensity level. Yeah. So tournaments bring that out no matter what level it is.
Yeah.
So irregardless, we have the preview this weekend. It's going to show us a lot. Other games to note, we also mentioned Roland Hall is going to be in Gunnison. Gunnison happens to sit as one of our dark horses right now. So they play Paiute on Wednesday, Gunnison does, and then they'll have Roland Hall coming to town on Friday. So Gunnison's got some showing to do as well.
Big test for this week. So excited to see what they can do. Well, with that being said, let's move on to what we say really matters, and that's the Power 5.
I think our Power 5 stayed the same.
Power 5 stays the same. Power 5, as always, is sponsored by Barney Trucking. If you want to drive one of the big, beautiful blue and white trucks, keeping the lights on here in Utah, go to barneyjobs.com. Thankful for the good folks at Barney Trucking. As the coach mentioned,
it's early, so we're just going to keep it Power 5 right now.
Nothing changed. Millard played a cupcake game this week. No offense, Coach Rhodes, but some tune-up games. But I think sometimes those are good. I think you got to
conditioning and getting on the court.
Get your kids going. Why don't you give us a quick reminder of who is in the Power 5 currently?
Starting at the bottom, we have Para 1 at 5, Enterprise 4. Who's 3? Millard 3, and we have Salsevier 2, Kanab 1. Our dark horses are currently right now Gunnison and Duchesne.
Yeah. So all of these teams, Kanab's got Delta and Duchesne this week. Interesting to see if Kason Janes is back. I understand he was still a little banged up from football, but they've played well so far. Salsevier has got, I would say, arguably the toughest slate of games this week. They're at Manti on Wednesday, which is a tough place to play. Then they've got North Summit, who is no slouch, and then Grantsville, who was second place in 3A last year. Millard's got Bryce Valley and Beaver, Enterprise, Ogden, and Carbon, first games for the Wolves, and then Parowan has Delta and North Summit. So this is going to be a big week for all these teams. I think you're going to see where everybody's standing.
No, and that's why we got to throw the Power 5 out with what it is, and then things will shake out and settle into its normal fashion. First thing that stands off the page is to me, Salsevier, their schedule is impressive. And Enterprise has got a tough week, Ogden and Carbon.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some tough matchups there. Third thing, I'm curious to see what Gunnison Valley can do.
Yeah. Paiute, who are the returning state champs. Coach Jessen always puts a good product on the court.
Yep.
He's got some returners from last year. There's nothing fancy. You know what they're going to do, but they come out and
they just come out and win.
They just come out and win. So our Bully Dogs are traveling down to Paiute High School this week.
I'm going to work the mic with Rhett that night.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
Run a little color.
That's exciting. And then that game on Friday night, I think there's a home game against Roland Hall. That's going to be a good test for Gunnison to see if they can keep going. I think as far as experience goes, I think Gunnison's got a little bit of an edge in that game, but they've got to play disciplined because Coach Alvidrez is going to have a disciplined group on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what.
Are things still going? About an hour. Almost.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts for this week?
No, I'm just happy to be home. We had a great weekend. I loved every amount. It exceeded all my expectations. And I'm excited for basketball. Man, we saw so much. We saw 3 Kansas games, 2 BYU games. We saw a Dayton, Wisconsin thriller. We got all the basketball. I could watch more basketball, but my wife reminded me we are in the Bahamas. We can't just watch basketball all day long every day, which Bones and I could have. We saw some awesome basketballs. We were amped to come back and get going for this week.
Yeah, it's exciting. It got me excited just watching it from home. So it was fun to live it through you guys.
Yeah. So anyway, we met a lot of awesome people out there and just kept Slim's story alive. That's the whole reason we're doing this. So great weekend. Happy to be back.
Yeah, a lot of things happening this week. As we wrap up tonight, we'd like to thank the Sanders family, Lightburst Broadband. Tim reminded me again today that the Vikings continue to win, and so everything is well at the Sanders family so far. I found out why we were talking today, and he said, why do you guys like the Vikings? He said, because they have cool colors.
Well, that's true. I don't know necessarily cool colors, but
yeah. But then he did colors. Say, and this is what I think. This is what I think the cool thing about sports is. This he said, Jim, who's their dad, took them back to Minnesota to watch a Vikings game. He says we were hooked. There's something about live sporting events that will draw you in.
That's one point that I have on my paper that I'm going to talk about next week. Being out at the Battle for Atlantis and how sports socially changes people and brings people together. I got a couple cool stories about that, but you are correct. Sports does weird things to people, but it's a cool bonding experience with people.
Absolutely, it is.
So I got a couple more things to share.
Yeah. So before we wrap up tonight, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our sponsors again. In Lightburst Broadband, we thank the Sanders family. Security National, a good friend, Chris Jorgensen, our good friends at Barney Trucking. Redmond Inc., appreciate all they do. Snow College. Benny's repping Snow College tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Both of us are Snow College alums, proud alums. The folks at Dixie Power, and also like to thank the good folks at Crosby Home and Farm who are giving away a Traeger grill. We've thrown some stuff on Instagram, so go out and follow them. This doesn't happen without our sponsors. We're not here to make a ton of money. It basically just, as they say, keeps the lights on and keeps things going. And we
literally keeps our lights on, yeah.
Appreciate everything that they do for us and for this. We're just getting going. I can feel the juices starting to flow.
Like
Next week is going to be exciting.
It's been our preseason.
Yeah.
2 weeks of preseason tune-up, and so now we got some games. We got some meat to chew on. We kind of just been nibbling around the edges the past couple of weeks, but we're going to have some good stuff this week.
Yeah, and I watched enough games. I think I'm getting my closing a little bit better. So for the coach Benny Hill, I'm Andy Hill, and for the Fourth Row, we're out.
Thank you for spending your time with the Fourth Row. For more information, check out our website at fourthrowmedia.com or send us a message through any of our social media channels.